Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Rory Flynn, and this is Ticket to Ride, new attacks on the MIFARE DESFire EV1 smart card used in public transportation. So, a bit about me. I'm a security engineer in Dublin. For those of you who aren't from Ireland or geographically unaware, Dublin is about 2 hours by bus from Belfast. You cross a little border there, but Bojo has kind of ruined the rest of this joke, so maybe if B-Sides is in January next time. So I've just finished 4 years of computer science in Trinity College Dublin. I'm a CTF player, and I also co-founded Hack Trinity CTF, which is a CTF run out of Trinity. I've made a few small security disclosures, nothing too big, to companies in the past. And this is also my first ever conference talk. So big thanks to B-Sides Belfast for the opportunity. So what's a MIFARE DESFire EV1? It's a bit of a mouthful. It's the chip in a lot of public transport cards. So, for example, the Leap card is used in Dublin and other places in the Republic of Ireland, and the Oyster card is used in London, and both of these cards contain the MIFARE DESFire EV1. More specifically, it's a contactless smart card chip, originally made by Philips, but then later acquired by NXP. The MIFARE brand, there's an entire range of smart cards, not just the DESFire EV1. The MIFARE range has 77% of the transport ticketing sector, so it's pretty much a huge monopoly. The MIFARE cards, you may have heard of them before because they have a certain reputation for security. The MIFARE Classic was fully cracked around 2008, 2009. By various researchers, and is now considered fully broken. No one should use it for access control or for public transport applications. NXP actually sued Radboud University Nijmegen, who did this research in Dutch court in 2008, 2009, to prevent publication of that research. There's a great contemporary account of that kind of process and how NXP came to sue the researchers in the paper called The Fall of a Tiny Star by these two people. So moving on to other MIFARE cards, the future, the next generation of cards. So we had the DESFire, some call it the EV0, it's the model before the one we're talking about today. So some researchers in Ruhr Universität Bochum in Germany found they could do differential power analysis. So this is where you do really finite power measurements to determine what operations the processor in the card is doing, and from this they were able to determine the master key for any card just by measuring power when it's communicating with a reader. So the card I'm talking about today, the DESFire EV1, is currently uncracked. There has been some research about the true random number generator from these people, but we haven't seen any practical attacks just yet. So it's in that context that I give legal disclaimers. Yes, there are multiple. So the first legal disclaimer, I carried out this research for my computer science undergrad project. However, this talk today is in a personal capacity. It doesn't represent my employer, and it doesn't necessarily represent the opinions of Trinity College Dublin. The second legal disclaimer is that none of the information presented here today was obtained under non-disclosure agreement. I didn't interact with any system that I didn't have fully permission to interact with. And I legitimately pay for all my public transport. Thanks for asking. So the overall aim of my research project was to see if I can attack a simulated ticketing system using the MIFARE DESFire EV1. So the documentation for this is all under NDA, as I mentioned. So you would have to sign an NDA if you wanted to learn even just how to use the card, full stop. So that's obviously not acceptable if I want to talk about it later. So some open source developers have made a fully compatible C API for the DESFire EV1, so you can create applications for different types of scenarios, and it obviously handles all of the cryptographic state and the complex stuff. So you can gain a lot of information about how the card works from this library. So then I used libfreefare to create a simulated public transport app on blank DesFire EV1 cards for various standard things you'd want to do for public transport, like topping up a card, tagging on, ticketing, that sort of thing. I then used this device, which is called the Proxmark 3, to snoop on communications between my genuine reader and my genuine card to basically analyze it at that protocol level. The Proxmark 3, I think there might be a new version out now, but it's basically a ARM microcontroller and an FPGA. The FPGA does all of the fast, like radio-related stuff, demodulation, modulation, that sort of thing. And then you have the microcontroller for your programs as well. So the DesFire EV1 is fundamentally an authenticated file system using cryptography. A card is divided up into a number of apps. These apps might serve a purpose, so you might have one for a particular transport operator and another for another one, another app for bike rental, that sort of thing. These apps have a number of files associated with them, and these files grant permissions to particular keys within the app. So there's a number of cryptographic keys associated with an app, and then those keys are given permission to do particular operations such as like read, write, read only, write only, read and write, or change configuration, that sort of thing. There's different types of files as well, which I'll get into during the presentation. So there's various communications modes you can use when communicating with the DesFire EV1. Broadly, we're only concerned with the bottom two categories there, on the right, legacy mode and modern mode. So debug mode, plain text, like no one should be really using that in a real life system. No one really does, so it's mostly for debugging your application. Legacy modes, you can use 3DES or single DES in legacy mode, and those can be broken into mapped communications or enciphered communications. The modern modes then, you can use another variant of 3DES. It's basically the same thing, but it's in a modern mode, and you can use AES, and same goes for those two modes as well, mapped and enciphered. We found you can find through non-invasive methods that the Leap card is currently using legacy modes and the Oyster card is currently using modern modes. So the communications will use cipher block chaining. This is kind of important later. So if you're operating in an enciphered mode, for example, you're basically transmitting the ciphertext output of the CBC operation. Whereas if you're using CBC mapped mode, you're transmitting plain text, but you're also transmitting a part of the final block of ciphertext to basically prove that you authenticated that plain text, that you're authorized to send that plain text. So there's a number of keys associated with the app, with each app. However, you don't use them directly in the CBC operation. Instead, you negotiate a session key with the card. The card and the reader negotiate a session key. They do this through a process where they kind of prove to each other that they both know the key, and the byproduct of this is a random, hopefully fully random session key that's unique to that particular session. So that brings me to the first attack, which is credit replay attack. So this attack is mostly relevant to top-up machines. There's top-up machines on O'Connell Street in Dublin. So obviously an operation you do with your card all the time is you use it as a stored value, and you have to top up and put money on the card. So I wrote kind of a simulation of this for the MIFARE DesFire, basically simulating where someone's phone is going off here. It's not mine. I think that would be cruel. Whoever's looking for their phone, it's here. Thanks. No worries, no worries. So basically this is an app that I wrote for crediting a certain file by a certain amount, and this is using legacy mode. So it basically just increases, it sends a command to the card. Let me see if I can get mouse, yeah. So, no, that's refusing. Laser, is that it? No. Come on, there we go. So, yeah, nice little laser pointer. So basically this command will say top up file number 1 by 2. And then commit the transaction. I'll go into more detail about what transactions mean later. So if we run this particular piece of code, and then we observe using the proxmark what bytes get transmitted between the card and the reader, we can see, we get this huge kind of dump of stuff. And I've kind of tried to interpret here what those mean. So here, you can see that there's an authentication procedure, application selection, authentication procedure. That's where the session key is negotiated that I mentioned earlier. And then we have a credit command. So this is legacy mode encrypted with 3des. So that's actually one block of encrypted 3des saying top up file number 1 by 2. Literally just increment the value in this file by 2. And then we commit the transaction. So if we run that again, we get a different credit command. So this is because the session key for the second run and the first run are different because you've negotiated a new session key. So this prevents you being able to just take the credit command and just play that back to the card at a later date and increment your balance. So that's good. But what happens if we credit twice in the same authentication session? So if we just issue that credit command twice, so this has a cumulative effect, so this script should increment by 2 and then by 2 again, so we should get 4. So something, strange happens. They get encrypted to the same value. And this introduces a replayability within the session where an attacker can replay the credit command multiple times to accumulate balance that they are not authorized to do so. So what's the reason for this? So before each command is transmitted, the initialization vector for the CBC mode is reset to all null bytes. And basically, why you should use an initialization vector in general with a random nonce is to prevent the same plain text getting encrypted to the same ciphertext. So how would this look in reality? So I've introduced the concept of this relay in the middle. It's kind of like a man-in-the-middle attack. So you place this device between the genuine top-up machine and the genuine card, and you relay commands and basically raw bytes between the genuine machine, the genuine top-up machine, and the genuine card. And you can also do some processing, which I'll mention now. So in this scenario, the top-up machine issues one credit command because you've topped up by €2 in a genuine way. We allow that through to the genuine card. However, before we commit the transaction, so when the relay sees that there's a commit transaction command coming through, we just replay the credit command, the same credit command, multiple times to the card. In this way, we can increment the balance beyond that authorized by the top-up machine. So the affected modes for this attack are the legacy modes. This is because that reset of the initialization vector to 0 before each command transmission only happens in legacy mode. In modern mode, you don't reset. You reset to 0 at the start of the entire communication. So modern mode is unaffected by this. So the second attack is the faked OK response, and this attack mostly concerns barriers. So barrier-based systems, you approach with your transport card, you tag on, it deducts a balance and records that you made a journey, and you can proceed to your train. When you exit the train on the other side at the end of your journey, it will record that you've finished your journey and give you back a certain amount of balance. So to mimic this, I implemented a simple tag-on program in libfreefare. This basically just writes H for hello, G for goodbye, just showing kind of a tag-on behavior. So let's look at that with the proxmark, see what bytes are transmitted. So we can see, if I get my laser pointer, come on. Well, we can see that when the reader writes data to the card responds with 00, which is, okay, I wrote that data to that sector. Thank you. There's other data there, right? So there's the final 2 bytes. That's a CRC. It's just for data corruption checking. So it's not actually a cryptographic tag or anything. This is ultimately spoofable, right? Because the card could just lie and say, yeah, I wrote that data, definitely. So an attack for this looks something like this. So we have the genuine entrance barrier, and we have our relay again. We allow everything through to the card that is a read. And then when the entrance barrier says, okay, write this data saying you made this journey and that you that we deducted your balance, the relay just responds for the card, saying, yeah, I totally wrote that. Thank you. So that response is spoofed. So we've gotten through the barrier. Now what? We've gotten through the barrier, but the card isn't tagged on. We don't have a valid ticket. So on the other side, right, the exit barrier should say, you've got no ticket. You're committing an offense here. So you would think that. So I discussed this with my friend Connell during the year while I was working on the undergrad project. And Connell said, one time the barrier was broken when he entered a station, and when he exited it charged him maximum fare. So this is what transport operators will do if you don't have a valid tagged-on ticket. They'll just charge you the maximum fare, assuming that you went the full length of the line, the maximum length. So hat tip to Connell for that tip, because this enables us to do the exact same thing at the other side. So when the barrier tries to write the fine of, €5 or €6, or if you're in the UK, like £1 million, the relay responds for you, and you're like, okay, I definitely have that fine on my record, and the barrier opens. So in this way, you can commit fraud on public transport. You're welcome. So the affected modes for this, again, are just the legacy modes. The reasoning for this is that in modern modes, the card's response is associated with encrypted data or a MAC, depending on what mode you're operating in. So the barrier can actually check, like, hey, did you actually write that or not? So modern modes are unaffected by this particular attack. So the third attack is the suspended commit, and this attack relates to barrierless systems. So I'm not sure if Belfast has a barrierless system transport example, but an example of this in Dublin is the Lewis, right? There's no one stopping you from getting on a Lewis without a ticket. You're on the honour system, and you will be checked as well, that you've tagged on to a reader on the side of the platform, and that you tag off then at the end of the journey. So there's no barriers involved, so it's kind of a different dynamic. So let's see if we can travel for free on such systems. This is an example of, I think, the Netherlands. You just tag on to your train. There's no barriers down below. So I rewrote the tag on application to use a modern mode, AES, and also to use transactions. So just to explain what transactions are. Who has heard of a database transaction? Okay, a good few. These are almost the exact same as database transactions. So for those of you who don't know what they are, a database transaction, essentially, until you commit it, none of the changes have been made. So you can make a series of changes to your database, and until you commit that transaction, none of it has happened. So there's a similar idea with the transport smart cards, and that's an anti-tearing mechanism. So transactions are used to prevent data corruption when you, for example, remove your card in the middle of all of these data writes going on, and you end up with like a corrupt card. So they have this idea of committing a transaction as the final step to ensure that your card doesn't end up in a corrupt state. So here I kind of tried to write that logic in libfreefare. It's the same hello goodbye example, but using transactions and also using a modern encryption mode for the DesFire EV1, which hopefully will result in a successful attack. So the thing we notice here is that the commit transaction command is always the last thing in the transmission. Almost always, because if you think about it, that's the last thing you want to do is just say, okay, finalize, because otherwise, someone could remove the power from the card after the commit transaction. So this diagram looks a lot more complex, and that's because it is. It's kind of awful to explain as well. But I was going through this presentation yesterday with a few friends, and they said, well, you should have called this Schrodinger's commit, because you can kind of commit and not commit, it's kind of like life. But you have a tag on point, right, which is like this yoke. So that's on the left in this diagram. You have your relay in the middle again, and your genuine card. So you allow all of these commands to go through to the card, right, including the write data ones. And until we commit this transaction, none of that data has been written to permanent memory yet. So what we can do in a barrierless system is have our relay, and we get to the commit transaction point. And we just store that command in the memory of the relay, keep our genuine card powered on, and then keep powered on throughout our journey. If we get inspected on that journey, we can allow the commit transaction command through to the card. This gives us a valid tagged on card. However, if we get to the end of our journey and we haven't been inspected, we can just power off the card, simulating a kind of an error or a corruption, and that write data never happened. It's as if the card was never tagged on. So that's one way to do fraud. So this attack affects both legacy and modern modes, and it's kind of more of a logical attack. So I went through a disclosure process, obviously with the card manufacturer NXP. Obviously this was in the context of the legal action over the MIFARE Classic. So my supervisor in Trinity was a great help, kind of for giving legitimacy to the process and organizing for it to take place. So I decided to send a final PDF of the paper to NXP's Product Security Incident Response Team. This is something they set up after the MIFARE Classic debacle. So they have a defined procedure for security researchers to report vulnerabilities to NXP. And NXP do a really wide range of products. They make a lot of processors, crypto processors. I think the YubiKey was using an NXP chip as well. So it's really a huge organization. So it's well worth their while having this system up. So they sent us an acknowledgement of receipt the next morning. Fair play, that's great. And after 5 days, reading the paper, obviously it's a pretty long paper, they gave us an initial response. So they said that attacks 1 and 2, which are the credit replay and the faked OK response, they're known to NXP. Customers are told not to use backward compatibility modes. And not only that, but the common criteria evaluation for the card says not to use these modes. I would dispute that point. The common criteria evaluation says not to use single DES. It doesn't apply to the 3 DES legacy mode. They also said that the NDA documentation is much more explicit about telling people not to use backwards compatibility modes. I don't have sight of that documentation, but we have to trust that it's correct. So attack number 3, they acknowledged it's new to NXP. They did say, however, it would likely affect other smart cards using that transaction-oriented model. But NXP will consider countermeasures in new designs, such as implementing a timeout on the card. They also kind of like left the ball in our court by saying like, okay, so this is what we know. We don't know about that one. Okay, keep us updated what you want to do about your findings, which in the context of the MIFARE Classic stuff is ominous AF. So we requested a conference call to discuss a bit further with NXP. On that call, we asked directly. NXP confirmed that they don't plan to notify customers of these attacks. We were aware that despite NXP's advice about backwards compatibility modes, that the Leap card was using legacy encryption and was possibly vulnerable to these attacks. NXP have them listed as a customer success story on their website, so we asked for contact in the National Transport Authority of Ireland to just kind of do disclosure with them as well. And we also told NXP that we plan to publish in 4 to 5 months. So we went through the disclosure process with the NTA, the National Transport Authority in Ireland. They're responsible for the Leap card system, which covers a few different operators in Dublin. It's Dublin Bus, Irish Rail, and the Lewis system. So we got a contact through NXP and also through the Irish National Cybersecurity Centre. We were kind of putting out multiple feelers at the same time. So we met with them in person. It was a really productive conversation on a really technical level. So we were able to talk with some of their engineers who work directly with the Leap card systems. So attack 1 doesn't affect the Leap card because they don't use this thing called a value file. A value file is the only file you can use with the credit operation. So they just write balances directly as bytes to the cards on a standard file. So attack 1 doesn't affect them. Attacks 2 and 3 do affect them. But we discussed, feasibility of things. We actually gave them a demo of attack 1, but yeah, long story. Attacks 2 and 3 do affect them. And we kind of discussed the practicalities of the attack, right? So, our demo was like a bunch of wires and a laptop and, multiple cards like elastic banded to a reader, and it was hard to imagine probably someone practically doing this, like going onto their bus and being like, hey, and like a massive array of wires coming out of their card. But so that was part of the discussion. We also discussed the possible back-end mitigations they could do. So how could they detect someone using attack 2 and 3? We talked about like balance reconciliation. So all of the barriers and stations and stuff upload on a batch basis all of their transactions. So there is a possibility of detecting, well, those balances don't add up on the back end, and possibly taking action against that person or blocking the card. So I gave NXP and NTA a right to reply to this presentation, and both of them are availing of that today. So I'll just read verbatim what they've supplied. So NXP have supplied these 2 slides. So NXP likes to thank the researchers for their responsible disclosure. We acknowledge all 3 vulnerabilities. Attacks number 1 and number 2 are not new. They are related to the first generation DesFire MF3 ICD-40 secure messaging protocol that NXP recommended already for several years since 2009 to no longer use. The new versions, EV1, EV2 of the chip, still support the old vulnerable protocol for backwards compatibility reasons. However, unless the old protocol is actually used, the attack is not applicable. Attack number 3 is not specific for this product, will only work when neither the entrance nor the exit is gated, so barrierless system, can be detected by back-end systems if this anomalous behavior takes place repeatedly, and it can then lead to blacklisting the card. It will also be solved from card side in the next generation of MIFARE DesFire that is under development. A timeout is implemented to prevent the withholding of the transaction. Excuse me. So NTA also gave us a statement. I've kind of summarized their points because it's kind of long. Also, I have like 15 minutes left, so I kind of need to fill time. So here's the statement from NTA. NTA was happy to work with Rory and TCD on this investigation and wants to thank them for following best practice in how these vulnerabilities were reported and to meet with NTA to discuss their findings. NTA is conscious that the security of the Leap card scheme is dependent on a complex supply chain over which NTA does not have full control. And NTA is very aware that vulnerabilities in underlying technologies could seriously damage the reputation of the scheme. Regarding the exploits, NTA has a series of back-end mitigations in place for the attacks that were demonstrated, including automated alerts. And we have discussed one of the issues with the card manufacturer, as its remediation is outside of our control. Leap cards can also be blocked if necessary, which is a mitigating factor. However, there is a financial incentive for people to utilize these exploits, so NTA is concerned about the potential impacts should they be weaponized or made more portable. Currently, the transport operators have revenue inspectors that patrol the transport network and would detect where a card was not updated if the tag-on was not written to the card before the inspector reached the cardholder. On the other hand, currently it would require less effort to not tag on at all rather than utilize these exploits. However, there will always be someone who tries to fare evade, no matter how secure the ticketing system. For example, the Lewis tram network is entirely open, and on the railway there are many unmanned stations, meaning that customers can enter without paying if they really want to. So for the time being, we don't think that these issues greatly increase our risk, and revenue protection methods for countering fare evasion, such as onboard inspections, will continue to be required. However, we recognise that this is only true until the next exploit is discovered. So I have a few people to thank. Many thanks to my supervisor, Dr. Stephen Farrell at Trinity. He was my supervisor for the whole project and was really helpful with coordinating disclosure with the various parties. Thanks to Barry Dorgan and Patrizio Simeoni at the NTA. Thanks to Hans de Jong at NXP for being our contact for the responsible disclosure. Thanks also to Andrew Watson, who is with the ITSO. He helped us draft a pre-disclosure earlier this week to the NCSC CISP threat sharing program. Also to Kevin Foley, who helped us with contacts at the NTA. There's huge open source work that went on that really helped with this project. Contributors to the Proxmark projects and the libfreefare projects in particular were great. So thank you to them. And thank you very much for listening. You can download the presentation from that QR code. Yeah. So thank you very much. And any questions?
I definitely know I'm not clicking that QR code after that talk. That was really great. Thank you very much for a first-time talk. It was brilliant. Guys, anyone any questions?
Are you going to try it home?
I think we all are.
Is there any... Great talk, by the way. Thank you. Is there any sort of small-scale version of that relay that can be bought online? Or do you, if not, do you think it would be feasible to build something smaller?
I think it would absolutely be feasible. So the reason there's not a demo here today is because the demo that we did have was kind of fudged because it was all running in user space. So we had to manually increase the timeout for a transaction. So I didn't feel comfortable kind of displaying something that was fudged. But in hardware, obviously, you don't have those limitations. So one of the reasons we were running into timing issues with the relay that we did have was the Proxmark was using USB polling, and there's a time on that, so it wasn't working all the time. I think it definitely can be miniaturized and in hardware that could fit in a wallet, which is obviously, it's a lot easier to disguise a wallet, and a lot of people keep their cards in their wallets. So I think, yes, it could be done, but, whether, it's worth your while going through that process, yeah. Okay.
Guys, any other questions? Oh, nice one.
Talk to us about TransLink. Have you had a go at them yet, or you discussed anything with them?
Unfortunately, I'm not a regular visitor to Northern Ireland. I should be more often, though. It's a beautiful part of the country. So I haven't talked to TransLink. As I mentioned, our pre-disclosure to NCSC, I am told that there is a few transport operators that are signed up to those alerts, so they got a kind of a advance alert earlier in the week. Obviously, ideally, NXP would be talking to these people, but they're not, so that's their choice. Yeah, if anyone wants to contact me, as I said, email and Twitter there. Thanks.
Anyone else? Nope. Okay. I'm going to keep you captive here for a couple of minutes anyway. We're just waiting on lunch to come out, so rather than everybody pile out and give the staff no room, if you don't mind just chilling here for a few minutes. Once again, Rory, thank you very much for your talk. It was really great.
Thank you.